It's hard to identify any winners in yesterday's local elections, but the clear loser was the great British public. The dismal low turnout was a rejection of our current politics. You deserve better, and you're being let down by the political class. Yesterday's turnout was a vote of no confidence in those who lead us and those who seek to. London was a triumph for Labour, winning the long-standing blue boroughs of Barnet, Wandsworth and Westminster. London has now moved so far to the left, it's twinned with Beijing. It makes Pyongyang look like a mecca of libertarian conservatism. Londoners, strap yourselves in for rising council tax bills and tumbling historic statues. But Labour's success last night was also its problem. It's consolidating support in an area it already dominates. To make any serious inroads on the Conservative majority achieved in 2019, the beer-swilling, cervix-free Sir Keir Starmer needed to be winning back the red wall. Instead, he's been knocking back the amber nectar. In fact, there were surprise Tory wins in bellwether areas like Nuneaton and Hartlepool. And Labour's tally of councils looks to have fallen outside London. But it was a bad night for the Tories too, which is now effectively unelectable in the biggest city in Europe, London, a metropolis previously run by Boris Johnson himself for 8 years. There was progress for the Lib Dems too, and the Greens. That may just be a protest vote, but if not, it will be a concern for both the Tories and Labour at the next election. If you're seriously fed up of the Conservatives and Labour, the Lib Dems may be an option. And Sir Ed Davey, a man so anonymous even his own family don't recognise him, well, this is a guy who could once again become kingmaker in the way that Nick Clegg was in 2010. Notwithstanding the kicking that the Tories got yesterday, including the loss of Southampton to Labour, another blow, it was a perversely positive result for the PM. Hanging on to those Brexit-supporting areas in the north preserves his red wall credentials, and I believe that given a collapse in Tory support north of Watford didn't materialise, not only does Boris Johnson live to fight another day, it's pretty clear to me he'll be fighting the next election. How so? The Tories lost badly yesterday. Well, of that there is no doubt. But if Labour cannot achieve a mid-term landslide in the context of the biggest cost of living crisis since the 70s, in the context of Partygate and the Prime Minister literally being investigated and fined by the police, if Labour can't draw blood in a backdrop of ever-increasing interest rates, rising taxes, soaring energy bills and inflation set to top out at 10%, when are they going to win? Having spent so long banging on about Partygate, Sir Beer Starmer was hoisted on his own petard and was served up a nice bubbly pint of his own medicine when the Mail newspaper broke the Labour Beergate story. Here it is. Rightly, Durham police will now investigate this matter. Whether guilty of breaking the rules or not, it's clear that Keir Starmer ordered curry for colleagues late in the evening and drank beers. And the party lied for months about Angela Rayner not being there. She was there after all. Why the secrecy? And the confected rage around stories that she distracts Boris at PMQs with her strawberry blonde anatomy. The famous ginger growler looks to have been her own story and her own X-rated language. Her growler, it seems, is worse than its bite. Whether the truth ever outs, the public will make their own judgments. I've got to tell you, although I work in the famously permissive and indulgent world of broadcast media, I can't ever remember a work event in which I hoovered up chicken tikka masala and pints of Stella. A stellar performance was needed from Labour yesterday, but perceived Partygate hypocrisy is bound to have blunted Starmer's pious, hand-wringing attacks on the beleaguered PM. Plus, the Labour leader's ongoing inability to define a woman, along with a perception that Labour is stuck in a metropolitan bubble, is mud that looks likely to stick. And the cost of living crisis, whilst on the face of it an electoral asset to Labour, will, I believe, become its Achilles heel. Because it's my view that the cost of living crisis is, in fact, the cost of lockdown crisis. And we know that Sir Keir Starmer was the greatest lockdown cheerleader of them all. If he'd been even the slightest bit lockdown sceptic sooner, he'd be laughing all the way to number 10. However, on the flip side, Labour have made several significant gains. For example, they appear to have ridden the party of the ghost of anti-Semitism, securing Barnet in North London, which proudly boasts a sizable Jewish community. And I congratulate Starmer for his progress on this important issue. Great and decisive leadership. I'd like to see more of that from him. And the Tories should not confuse expectation management, they were expecting to be slaughtered yesterday, with electoral success. In truth, there's every chance that fragmented support and a disaffected public voting perhaps for smaller parties will deliver the worst possible scenario for the country at the next election. A hung parliament. Hang me now. We had one of those under Theresa May, and you will remember the hellish Brexit deadlock that we all went through. Well, just imagine a hung parliament in the context of what could be the biggest economic crisis since the winter of discontent in 1978, when the government went to the IMF to beg for money. The truth is, there are millions of people in this country who feel politically homeless, with a Conservative government that isn't Conservative anymore, and a Labour Party that appears to have lost interest in the British working class and their strong patriotism and traditional values. It seems Labour are ashamed of them. And under Starmer, the perception is that Labour have been drinking not just illicit beers, but the woke Kool-Aid. Labour has become the party of extreme political correctness, the party of pronouns, and a party that won't even acknowledge basic human biology. How telling that they gained Mayfair, but lost Hull. I think that tells you everything you need to know. You could argue yesterday's results were a scoring draw, and a bore draw at that. Own goals on both sides. It was back of the net for no one. Yesterday was a game of two halves, but it was Labour's job to get on the score sheet, more so than the sitting incumbent, the top-of-the-table Tories. There was some Labour success, but no Tory collapse. Those key northern regions have clearly not forgiven Labour for their attempts to reverse Brexit, a policy crafted by Starmer himself, a man who, don't forget, campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister. A lot of this is a political hangover for Starmer that no amount of paracetamol will clear. Labour is suffering from a severe bout of long Corbyn and long Brexit. Will it have cleared up by the next election? I wouldn't hold my breath. To be honest, I'm not enamoured by either of these two parties. I honestly didn't have a clue who to vote for yesterday. And the monster raving loony party looks positively statesmanlike compared to this shower. The issues are clear. The country needs a serious plan to tackle the shocking cost of living crisis, to deliver a proper Brexit, to secure our borders, and to scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol, which divides our country. We need a police force that actually goes after criminals, schools that teach kids subjects, not woke politics, and we need an NHS that actually treats people in a timely fashion and gives them a face-to-face GP appointment this side of Christmas. If nothing changes, I believe Boris walks the next election. But it would be nice if the opposition gave him a run for his money. Whoever gets this country back on an irreversible path to recovery gets my vote. But whatever happens, Britain deserves better.